Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving right into a massive challenge that literally every single organization faces, navigating these rapid, unpredictable external forces to somehow keep a competitive edge. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're going to explore exactly how top-tier strategists anticipate these massive global changes before they even happen. So you might be wondering, how do businesses actually survive in an unpredictable world? Because let's face it, the modern landscape is totally chaotic. We're talking fluctuating global markets, sudden technological breakthroughs, shifting regulations, and massive ecological changes. Well, the analytical antidote to all that chaos is something called environmental scanning. Think of it as a strategic radar system built specifically to ensure you never get blindsided. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be funneling down from the big picture to some highly specific strategies. We'll hit 1. The external business environment. 2. Scanning with PESTLE analysis. 3. The physical environment factor. 4. Environmental risks and opportunities. And finally, 5. Adapting your business strategy. Starting off with Section 1, the external business environment. As a manager or strategist, you constantly wrestle with this really stark contrast. It's the controllable internal environment versus the completely uncontrollable external environment, right? While you can absolutely dictate your corporate culture, your human resources, and your org structure, you literally cannot dictate macroeconomic conditions, sudden extreme weather events, or what your competitors are doing. These external forces are simultaneously your biggest, most terrifying threats and your absolute most lucrative opportunities. Moving right along to Section 2, scanning with PESTLE analysis. Now, environmental scanning is often likened to a wild animal that is just constantly aware of its surroundings. It's out there looking for predators. Those are your threats. But at the very same time, it's looking for food, which are your opportunities. That is exactly what an organization has to do. Scanning is essentially monitoring, evaluating, and then passing along critical info from the outside world to key people inside the company. It's your early warning system to avoid a nasty strategic surprise. And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually do that without suffering from total information overload. We use the PESTLE matrix. It takes all that external chaos and sorts it into political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental buckets. The beauty of this framework is that it forces structured thinking. It makes sure you catch how a shift in one single area, like the environment, for example, can spill over and trigger massive changes in all the others. Which brings us to Section 3, the physical environment factor. We're going to aggressively zoom in on the E in PESTLE here. Historically, this framework was actually just pest analysis. No E, no L. But as the business community woke up to the fact that physical ecological shifts present real material risks, the framework had to evolve. The E was added to form PESTLE because people realized environmental shifts absolutely do not happen in a vacuum. A change in the physical environment directly triggers new political regulations and shifts economic realities for businesses overnight. Today, that E in PESTLE overlaps a ton with major modern movements like ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance, and CSR, or corporate social responsibility. And what this proves is that ecological accountability isn't just some fluffy PR initiative anymore. Not at all. It demands continuous monitoring because a company's environmental footprint is now fundamentally tied to its overall viability and operational risk. Let's get into the specifics in Section 4. Environmental risks and opportunities. So, what are we actually looking for when we scan the environment? We're looking at things like a company's carbon footprint. We're tracking the physical and transition risks of climate change. We're watching for increased extreme weather events that could suddenly shatter a supply chain. And we're looking at the stewardship of natural resources, like fresh water. Going back to our wild animal metaphor for a second, these factors right here, these are both your dangerous predators and your most vital food sources. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it maps out the ripple effects. Look at how a single macro issue, like global warming, strikes different industries in totally unique ways. For farmers and ski resorts, the impact is literal and physical. It's direct operational disruption from the weather itself. But then look at automakers and electricity generators. For them, the strategic impact bleeds right into the legal and economic buckets of PESTLE. They're suddenly facing carbon taxes and government-mandated switches to zero-emission vehicles. Same environmental shift, entirely different business impact. And finally, Section 5, adapting your business strategy. Okay, so how do organizations actually take these external findings and alter their internal behavior? Here is the logical flow. Step 1, you scan those external environmental trends using PESTLE. Step 2, you identify the specific material risks or mandatory disclosures that are going to hit your specific firm. And step 3, you completely reevaluate your internal tools, your operations, and workflows to adapt. Because at the end of the day, strategy without actual implementation is really just a wish. So the crucial point is illustrated really well by this real-world example. Imagine a publicly traded firm that suddenly faces an external shift. Let's say the stock exchange mandates new, strict climate disclosures. In response, management literally has to pivot and completely reevaluate their internal reporting tools just to track their greenhouse gas emissions accurately. They are actively changing their controllable internal environment just to maintain equilibrium with a totally uncontrollable external shift. Which leaves us with this final, really important question. Is your strategy ready for the next environmental shift? Because as the complexity of the world accelerates, relying on a framework like PESTLE and keeping a really sharp eye on those physical environmental factors is absolutely crucial. It ensures your organization isn't just reacting to the world, but actively anticipating it. Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep scanning that horizon and keep adopting.